All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Consistency Corner podcast. I'm really pumped for this conversation today with my friend Scottie Durrett, who, funny enough, as we're recording this, my episode on her podcast just came out. So we've already had a chance to kind of chat and get to know each other, and we'll link that episode in the show notes for you guys. But Scottie is, first of all, a former stay-at-home mom of 3 and a reformed mommy martyr, which if you're like, whoa, hold on, wait a second, what is that? We're going to be talking a lot today about radical responsibility for your own life and how that can ultimately transform your journey in both motherhood and business. And Scottie does an excellent job of empowering moms to rediscover their purpose, the balance, the passion beyond motherhood. And we'll talk a little bit today to give you the permission to not have to do all the things, because at the end of the day, none of us really can do all the things all the time. It's just too much. So I'm so excited to have you here today, Scottie. Tell us a little bit about you, your journey, how you got to where you are in business and motherhood today.
Love it. I will say, if I was driving in the car right now and that intro came on and I was about to hear a podcast episode with all the things you just shared, I'd be so fired up. I'm so thankful for women like you that are using your time and energy to share these types of tips, because the more we can open up, the more we can share. And this will lead into my bio. I think less alone we're going to feel. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here. My name is Scottie. As Ruthie said, I am by definition a stay-at-home mom. When my husband and I got married and we decided to have kids, I made this conscious choice. I want to be home with the kids. I don't want them raised by a babysitter. And, I felt really strongly about that. We had 3 kids pretty close together and I was in it. I dove into the deep end, momhood all day, 24/7, nonstop. Fast forward 12 years, this is what I did. I was basically walking through my house and kind of collapsed to the floor. My body just physically stopped working on me. And I think after years of ignoring emotional, physical, spiritual, mental signals that my body was sending to me, it finally just said, time out. She's not listening. She's not making the changes we're asking her to change. So we actually have to just kind of force her into submission, and so to speak. Like when your physical body breaks down, you actually can't ignore it the way you could ignore maybe a headache or being a little tired. And, that really, at that moment, I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know how I had gotten myself there. I felt very confused, but I realized, okay, I can't stay here, right? This isn't good enough for me. And so from that point on, I realized I need to go out and I need to understand, how did I get to where I am? How can I make some better choices for myself? Because I want to be the mom for my kids. I want to be me. I wanted to wake up and feel good moving through my days. And I hadn't felt that way in a really long time. I want to have a business. I want to have, I want all these dreams. And I was realizing, gosh, the way I'm living, I'm actually stopping myself from pursuing my own dreams. So, that began a journey of just a lot of, asking myself questions. I started into a network marketing company. That was like a really small way to kind of just, get out of being only a stay-at-home mom. And then through that, I met other women and I realized I'm not the only one that feels this way. And that, evolved into my podcast, and that evolved into me going back to school to become a life coach. And that's evolved in me doing other things. And it's gotten me to where I am now. And I, honestly, I just share my journey because, gosh, if I'm going through it, there's absolutely another woman, parent, mom who's going through it too. And if we can admit life is hard, having a business is hard, being a mom is hard, but we don't have to do it alone. And it doesn't, to be successful, you don't have to be in pain. I think that was a huge epiphany for me, that you can actually feel good and pursue your dreams and have success. And so that was a massive shift. And now I'm here just on a mission, trying to empower women to, like you said, give themselves permission to do what feels good, to go after their dreams, and to focus on what they really want to focus on, and maybe let go of focusing on things that are not serving them anymore, right? Like what you said.
Well, it's interesting that moment led you down this path of this journey, because there is no overnight fix. It is a journey, it's a process. But I think so many people would just be like, oh, I just need a vacation, or I just need a girl's weekend away, or I just need a nap. But there is not a quick fix when you get to that point. And I think what I see a lot of women do is they try to apply the Band-Aid, they try to apply the quick fix. It works for a little bit, and then it doesn't work anymore. And then we're like beating ourselves up because we're like, why can't I be like I used to be?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Like, that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yes, it is. It's a hard pill to swallow. And I really appreciate that you also, sometimes when you're so busy and you're so overwhelmed by everything that you've created, everything you've chosen to do, you've chosen to have kids, you've chosen to get married, you've chosen to have a business, you think to yourself, I don't even have time to sit down to eat. I'm only eating my kids' leftover cold mac and cheese. How in the world am I going to have time to meditate, have soul searching questions, journal? I can barely stay awake when I'm reading my kids' books at night. I would always fall asleep, like crash before I was finished reading, the little engine that could to my son. I think for me, I think I had been getting little signals, those headaches, the exhaustion, the burnout, the longing, that voice in my head. Gosh, is this it? I feel like I'm meant for more. I don't know what more is, and I don't have time to go searching for more. So I was already getting these like signals, but I had been ignoring them. So while I say I kind of had this, moment where I fell to the floor, deep down, I knew it wasn't an overnight journey to get me to burnout either. I knew that I had been kind of gaslighting myself, kind of putting myself on the back burner for years and years and years. And I also, when this happened, my daughter was 12. So I also had evidence that Mother's Day, the girls' trip, that one Sunday afternoon, while they felt good, they didn't actually last. So I already had evidence that those were maybe just the Band-Aids. They were treating the symptom, but they were not treating the root cause of how did I get myself to this place in the first place.
Yeah. And Oprah says, I'm a huge Oprah fan.
I love Oprah.
Oprah tells us all the time that the universe is speaking to us in whispers. And if we're not listening, it starts to talk a little bit louder. And if we still don't listen, it's eventually going to hit us with a brick wall. And once you hit the brick wall, then you go back and you're like, oh yeah, those were whispers. Oh yeah, I should have listened to those.
Yeah. And I will say, if you're not I'm very woo woo. And if you're not into the universe, or if that doesn't resonate, I mean, if you go into any health podcast, they will say, look, the decisions you're making right now are going to determine your health 20 years from now. Right. And so while it's easy to put your blinders on, it's easy to live on autopilot, but one thing I love that you and I are really hitting home, it's like, gosh, let's just hit pause every now and then and step back and say, wait, is this helping me get to where I want to go? Or is it keeping me stuck? And that was a huge approach for me, because in that moment when I realized, I was holding a laundry basket, I'd kind of crashed to the floor. I was crying. I didn't have any answers, and I didn't have a solution at that point either. I didn't know how I was going to help myself feel better, but I did have this conversation with myself. It was like, you know what? I've gotten through some stuff in my life. I know I can get through this. And I know that I have high standards. And to me, when we feel like the rug is being pulled out from underneath us, or we feel like we've hit a rock bottom, I say congratulations, because that means you actually still care. That means you actually still have a standard, that you aren't at where you want to be. And it's really a beautiful opportunity for you to step back and say, hold on. Do I like the way I'm moving through my day? Do I like the way I feel? I don't? Great. Let's do something about it. I'm still breathing. I'm still standing. I'm still here. I still have time. And I really believe you're never too old, and it's never too late, honestly. Even if you're 99, right? If you want to do something like go play shuffleboard on the cabana, go do that, right? I think we have this every day we wake up really is that beautiful gift. And I just want us to make sure it sounds hokey, but it's like, we don't have to just go through the motions. We can decide we want to slow down a little bit and actually just check in with ourselves.
Yes. Well, in terms of checking in with ourselves, I think one of the really important things is setting boundaries.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of setting boundaries often comes guilt and shame.
Yeah.
So how do we manage those boundaries and those standards that we set for ourselves without feeling guilt and shame?
If you feel guilt and shame, you're not alone, and there's nothing wrong with you. It also means you care. And there's also probably some, models and examples that you've seen before you that have told you this is how you are supposed to mom and live your life.
Mhm.
And there's a two-part answer to this. One, I think if you feel that way, you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you, but pay attention to those feelings because that's actually information for you. Why do I
Mhm.
feel guilty about taking time for myself? What is this actually going to give me if I do take time for myself? How will I feel when I'm around my kids? How will I be able to show up for my business? Because I know when I get a good night's sleep and I eat well, I'm actually more creative. So then I'll have more creative ideas for, our trips and my clients and my business. And gosh, then I'll have more energy. And so when you feel those feelings, I don't think of guilt and shame and sadness and anger and frustration as any of those feelings as bad. They're just information, kind of like the universe. It's whispers, right?
Mhm.
That's telling you, get curious why you feel this way and how is that serving you? Is it allowing you to be the mom and the version of you? And then I always say, start small. Look, it doesn't mean you have to go leave your kids for 6 months at a spa, but could you build, and you talked about this a lot on my podcast, which I thought was so powerful. It's like, do you have any joy in your week? And we don't mean joy like, yeah, I have so much joy watching my son play baseball. I have so much joy when my kids love the dinner I made. Yes, of course, we know you love your kids, but you having joy has nothing to do with how you feel about your kids. Like, I want to separate those two things. How
Mhm.
we treat ourselves doesn't mean that we're taking stuff away from our kids. Um, can you build in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, right? Where you do something that you're like, oh, I feel like myself again. I don't feel like a mom. I don't feel like a wife or a partner or a friend or a daughter or a business owner. I felt like me. And I would
Mhm.
say start small. And then when you start small, your brain starts to see and get proof and evidence like, wait, that felt good. We didn't die. No one abandoned us. No one rejected us. And actually, I loved that when my kids got home from school, I wasn't annoyed that they were already home and it was the end of the day. I was like, I can't wait for them to walk in.
Yeah.
And you start small and then you grow, and I always say when you set a boundary, start with the people that those unconditionals, it's like set it with your partner, set it with your bestie, set it with that person that actually wants to see you thrive in your life. And that's how you kind of build the confidence to then set further boundaries. And as you do that, then you're healing the guilt and the shame at the same time because you realize I'm even a better mom. I'm a better me. I'm showing up. I'm yelling less. I'm sleeping better. Oh my gosh. Now I don't have guilt at night because I yelled so much. Like
Mhm.
it all starts to kind of balance each other out. But I get it. It's hard. I get it.
Yeah. Well, you said one of the things about feeling the joy, but then also allowing yourselves to feel the shame, the sadness, the anger. And I think so many of us who are high achieving and doing
Mhm.
all the things, we don't give ourselves the permission to feel the
Yeah.
negative feelings, which then stunts our ability to feel the good things.
Yes.
I think we forget how to feel joy because we don't allow ourselves to feel anything.
Oh, yes. That's so well said. I have goosebumps because it's so true, right? Like you can't have only happiness. It's not possible. And it is so true. When you power yourself, I mean, think about a time in your life where you got through something and you're like, oh my gosh, I did that. That was hard, but I powered through. I'm so much more strong. I'm so resilient. I'm so proud of myself. Gosh, I have so much more confidence, right? And then when you succeed and reach that goal, you're like, this feels better than anything. But I think there's been over time, we've been programmed to believe that there are some things in us that are bad. It's bad to be tired. It's bad to need a break. It's bad to feel sad or overwhelmed or, none of that's bad. It's actually the way I think about any kind of information we're getting from our body, our heart, any kind of communication. It all has a positive intention. It's just trying to help us learn more about what we need so that we can
Mhm.
thrive, right? If you're waking up tired every single day and you're dreading your day as a mom, that does not mean you're a bad mom. It means there's something out of balance with how you're moving through your day, how maybe you're feeding yourself or how you're sleeping through the night. And if you focus on that one thing, my gosh, there's a puzzle piece you've just put into place. And now it's going to help you show up even more you and more of that mom you want to be. And so I
Yeah.
think there's that kind of, but I love what you said. You cannot, well, I think you'll appreciate the joy and tap into those feelings again when you allow yourself to actually feel.
Yeah. And I've heard women say, like, I don't even know what I find fun anymore. I
Oh,
don't even know what my hobbies are. I don't even know what I like
yeah.
because we haven't given ourselves that
Yes.
grace to feel those things. And, I hear you talk about radical responsibility for yourself. And so many high achieving women, they're like incredibly responsible for their business, for their families, for everyone else's situation. So, what does it look like to actually take radical responsibility for yourself? And then how does that ultimately like impact your leadership in your business and in your
Mhm.
family?
I love this. It's, two things came to mind. We've all seen that reel that Mel Robbins has put up, like, no one's coming,
Mhm.
right? Like, no one's coming. And while that's incredibly harsh and can feel blunt, if you've been neglecting yourself, that's you can get defensive, which I understand. I felt that way. But if you can almost like breathe those words in and you realize, right, no one's coming to knock on my door and say, hey, you were looking really tired today. How can I help you? you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And when you finally realize that and you say, hold on, but the person that I need to literally knock on the door is me. And if I allow myself to participate and to actually pay attention to how I'm feeling, I can actually get the results I want that much faster. And it's this beautiful like hurdle, right? When you finally hurdle this moment where you've been sitting here kind of waiting for life to get easier, waiting for your kids to get older, waiting for that certain number to hit the bank account. Gosh, then I'll be happy when I'm making $10,000 a month. I'll be happy when I lose the 10 pounds. I'll be happy when my kid makes the baseball team, right? We're putting all of our happiness and all of our well being in really external surface factors. The
Mhm.
goal really is to be, how can I be happy right now as I'm working toward the $10,000 months, as I'm helping my kid toward pursuing his goals? But you have to, in the most simple way, it's like you have to consider yourself in your own life, right? And I break it down into like something as relatable as what's for dinner. We all dread the dinner conversation. I'm loving my DoorDash right now. And my kid the other night was like, I want Chipotle. I was like, if I eat Chipotle one more time, I think I might go literally lose my mind.
Yeah.
And so, but before I would have said, you know what, if it makes my kid happy, I'll just get him the Chipotle. That's what a good mom does, right? She sacrifices what she wants in order to give for her kid, right? But then I would have been annoyed. I probably would have been frustrated through dinner. I probably would have felt kind of like, how come nobody asks me what I want for dinner? So instead, I said, hey, why don't we find something we both want? Here's some suggestions. And we ended
Mhm.
up finding these great salads and we had a great dinner. And guess what? I was more engaged at dinner. I was more present. I felt more backed. And nobody else did anything different. They kept
Mhm.
living their life the way they always live their life. I took care of myself differently. I
Mhm.
considered myself and included myself in the decision making. And so deep, deep, deep down inside your heart's like, oh, she took care of us. She listened to us.
Mhm.
Then I'm here for her. If she's here for me, I'm here for her, right? And I'm going to give her some more messages like, hey, I really want to go to bed at 9, not 11. And you start to notice like, gosh, if I start taking care of myself in those little whispers, then
Mhm.
it's like, it doesn't have to change the world around me. I just start to change in my world. And then
Yes.
to your point, I have more patience with my kids. I have more creativity for my business. I'm more productive when it comes to taking care of my clients. It starts to bleed into everything you're doing. And I will tell you this, nobody is any wiser that you are all of a sudden considering yourself. Like they're just moving on with their life and they're like, oh, but mom isn't yelling as much as you used to. Or, and she's actually sitting and listening to me. It's like you start to see these other benefits
Mhm.
and it really does make a difference. But the radical responsibility, we can feel so exhausted because, like you said, oh my gosh, all I do is take responsibility for my kids, for my this, for my that. None of that has to change. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my journey is that taking care of myself has nothing to take away from my kids. Like we need to
Mm.
separate these two energies, right?
Mhm.
How you treat yourself, it's a model, it's a blueprint that you're going to give your kids, but it doesn't mean, it's not canceling out anything for your kids, right? And I think the same way could be, you can be sad and frustrated with how life is working out and grateful with all you have at the same time. you don't have to always be grateful, right? In order for you to appreciate your life, those things don't cancel each other out. They're separate. And I think if we separate our own well-being from our kids' well-being, then we
Mhm.
realize, gosh, if I'm taking care of myself, I'm only showing up as a better me. Who does
Yeah.
that give?
Yeah.
Right. And so that was a huge, it can start small. Again, it's like small, like just consider yourself in those everyday decisions.
Yeah. I think because time
Mm.
is not infinite,
Hmm.
we assume that that means responsibility is also not infinite. Like there's not enough responsibility to go around. So I got to
Hmm.
choose what I'm going to be responsible for. But like we know that love is infinite. I can
Yep.
love my kid and
Yep.
my husband. I can love my kid and my second kid when I have another one. Like I don't run out of love.
No.
And I think that's the way we have to think about responsibility
Hmm.
is that we can be responsible for all of those things. And it's not about spending more time on something. It's just about making different decisions.
Yeah, different decisions. I love that example too. And it is that kind of old age saying, like, give a busy person more to do. It's not, there are some people that are just too busy, but you almost look at that person of like, you know what, she seems to have, why does she look like she's doing it all? Well, one, she's not doing it all. But to your point, she's likely setting some good boundaries around how much she's giving to each area, right? So
Mm.
I don't think there's a perfect balance, but I think as a working, entrepreneur mom who's high achieving and very ambitious and cares a whole lot, it's almost like allowing life to tell you this area needs more of your attention than this other area and letting that happen and letting that play. Because if, say, your own mental and physical well being needs a lot of your attention, take that seriously, give it to it. Because I promise you, the love that you've been giving your kids for the last years, the energy and the effort that you've put into your business, they're not going to fall off the cliff just because you're putting a smidge more energy in yourself. But if you tend to the area of your life that's asking for you to take responsibility and tend to it, I promise you, and this is like repeated viewing, like you will have more internal strength and ability to be able to then show up in the other areas of your life. So then you actually ultimately will start to feel more balanced.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think part of that goes into being able to ask for what you need and ask for
Mm,
help. And
yeah.
I'm sure when you say taking radical responsibility doesn't mean doing everything yourself.
No.
So, how do we give ourselves permission to let some things go, delegate some things, ask for help when it feels like, well, I have to be responsible for it all?
I love that. Great clarification too, as we're sitting here saying that no one's coming. You have to take radical responsibility for yourself. It is a practice learning how to, and trying to think the best way. It's like, it's a practice learning how to focus on what matters most to you and letting everything else go that's not that priority in the moment, right? We all have different seasons, right? It's that's one thing I can promise us about life and motherhood. It's always changing. So as soon as you get into one routine, what happens? A new routine. We were just talking about this. As soon as you get comfortable with your summer routine, what happens? And now it's back to school routine, right? As soon as we get comfortable with that, all of a sudden they're home for 3 weeks for Christmas, holiday break. The question is, how can you take care of yourself and protect your energy, protect your well being, protect your mindset so that no matter what season of life you're in, you feel good about how you're showing up to it, right? We have no control over what's going on around us, but we always have control over how we respond to life.
Mhm.
So, but it takes some getting to know yourself. You were alluding to that earlier. Like, what does matter to you? What are your priorities right now in this season of life, right? If you were going to write down your top 5 priorities, what are they right now? Everything else that's not in those top 5, hi, I love you and I care about you, but you're going on this shelf over here. And
Mhm.
right now, this is what I'm focusing my energy on. I'm focusing on my business growth. I'm focusing on getting my kid into college. I'm focusing on my physical health. And everything else. Look, I love, just because we can do everything doesn't mean we should, but that's a boundary and it's a practice. Like, it's not only that you're setting boundaries with your life, you're setting boundaries with yourself, right?
Mhm.
And that to me has given me a lot of comfort knowing, gosh, if this request comes across my email, that's not a priority. Thank you so much for that invitation. I'm not available right now, but if a time opens up, I'll definitely let you know. And something else that really helps me too, if it's not a heck yes for me, and I always believe in my soul that a no for me is somebody else's heck yes.
Mm-hmm.
So if I actually let that no pass me by because I know in my body I don't have the interest, the time, or the energy for it, somebody else down the road is like craving whatever that opportunity is. If I take it, then they don't get it either. And so I always think like trust those nudges from your body, the universe, your heart. Those internal nudges know. And so, it's a practice. There might be a lot of stuff that's on your to-do list that is clogging your energy. It's an energy leak. It's overwhelming. So baby step it. If you all say to all this week, all you do is just get clear on what are your top 5 priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And then every week you slowly start to protect those. Like, okay, this is what I'm focusing on first. If I have time and energy to get to those 6, 7, and 8 things, I will. But if I don't, at least I know I focused on my priorities, and that's amazing.
And if you have to DoorDash dinner or pick up pizza, it's okay.
It's
It's
okay.
okay. Like you
It's
still
okay.
ate. Your family was still fed. And
Totally.
that 30 minutes that you didn't spend in the kitchen, that 15 minutes that you didn't have to spend doing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen afterwards, that's 45 minutes that you can give back to yourself.
Yeah. And think
And
about that in mom energy and business energy. That's like 2 hours, right? Like how
Mhm.
exhausted are we are. And I didn't touch on your point about asking for help. I will say that from the beginning, when I realized I wasn't doing well, I called my husband and I said, babe, you don't have to fix this. I'm not asking you to solve this, but I'm letting you know I'm not doing well. I'm
Mhm.
not doing well. And I'm going to start making some changes so that I can feel better. He was like, absolutely. Thanks for letting me know. One thing I've found repeatedly with my husband and with my kids, they like to know what I'm working on. They want to know what goals I've got going on. They want to know what I'm focusing on and what matters to me. I think they like being included. They like getting to know us and they see us. Yeah, she's my mom, but I'm cheering her on as she's trying to get 10,000 steps every day. And, my kids will come in and say, Mom, did you drink that water? I know you want to drink that water. They actually almost they like to see that side of you. So I think the more we can also really admit and speak up and like you said, ask for help, it, even just sharing with those closest people in your life, this is how I feel. It can be edited out for age appropriate kids. They don't need to see everything. But I think, like to your point earlier, it's good for them to see that you are allowing yourself to feel, you're
Mhm.
allowing yourself to change, you're allowing yourself to pivot, you're allowing yourself to grow and ask for help, to take breaks, to rest and to delegate, because actually that's how they learn how to do all of that themselves.
Yeah.
One thing I do notice, I was a massive people pleasing perfectionist for a long time. And my daughter is now 17, almost 18. So we talk a lot more. She used to say, I was afraid to tell you that I was having a hard day because you never had a hard day. And I thought
Mm.
I had to hold it together because you always seem to have it all together. I'm like, I didn't have it together. I just didn't
Mm.
show anybody that. And so
Yeah.
now I'm not showing her like everything, but I let her know, like, I'm really tired today. I can't do that project today. Can we push that out till next week so I have more energy? Of course. It's good for her to see that I'm also looking after myself that way. And then they realize my mom's not perfect, so I don't have to be perfect either. And I
Yes.
can ask for help, right?
That's so true. And I love what you said about when you went to your husband and had that conversation that you started with not asking you to fix this.
Yeah.
That is such an important thing when we go to have a conversation with those important people in our lives, to sometimes preface it with, I'm not looking for solutions. I
Yeah.
just need to share with you right now.
Yeah.
You
Hold space,
know?
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. To hold
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
And I love that modeling it for your kids, because you're right. If we don't say to them, hey, I'm really angry about such and such, and this is what I'm going to try to do to work through that, they don't know.
I
They
don't know.
don't know how to do it because those are not innate skills. Those are learned skills.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's so true. And I love moms and women so much. And everything we're doing from the core is coming from such a place of love, right? We push ourselves to, I'll stop at nothing for my kids. I'm going to be the perfect mom for my kids. I'm going to be the perfect coach for my clients and the perfect, we just want everything to work out, and we'll literally stop at nothing. And there's so much beauty in that. But you also, I think just noticing if you are feeling not as good as you want to feel, please just take that seriously, because it's going to hold you back from allowing you to be that version that you want to be.
Yeah.
But it's also, there's so much beauty in the life experience, right? I've never been 47 and had an 18-year-old, my very first time. So since it's my very first time, how in the world am I supposed to be the perfect mom? I've never been here before. So
Yeah.
I'm also learning and growing and going through life at the same time. And I think there's so much beauty when we kind of allow ourselves to give ourselves that beauty, like that grace, like, yeah, never done this before, but I'm going to do the best I can. And the way I can do the best I can is to make sure that I'm taking care of myself and I'm loving myself so that I can show up with love. And then, we're going to get through it because we're communicating, we're sleeping, we're eating, we're giving ourselves break. And like you said, and we're also finding the joy in this.
Yeah.
And I think it's just and then you can realize, gosh, you know what? We're going to get through it together, and I don't have to do it all on my own. And that's been a huge transition for me, really looking at my family as, yes, while moms are the CEO and the CMO and the CFO, we are a team.
Yeah.
And everybody has a role in the house to play. Right.
Mhm.
And I think the more you start to bring in that, like, hey guys, we're a team. How are we getting through the week? Who has what going on? Okay, great. How can we all help you? Here's what I have going on. Here's what I want from y'all. And that way it becomes much more of like a unit rather than it all being on the mom. And the more you talk about it, they realize, yeah, we all have a lot going on. And
Yeah, and I think even within your business, come sharing with your family, hey,
Oh.
I have this big presentation this week, or hey, I'm really head down because I'm trying to prepare for a launch that's happening next month. I think that's something that if you're not an entrepreneur, which your kid is probably not, and your spouse may not be, they don't always understand and
No,
know those rhythms. And so to be able to communicate with that can only give them the information they need to show up for you.
absolutely. In all areas of our life, if we don't ask for it, we're definitely not going to get it. So if you need more support, if you need more breaks, if you need more help around your business, around your house, it's like, what do you need? And I think it goes back to what you were saying before. It's like, if you can't answer those basic questions, like what brings me joy, what makes me happy, what do I really need? If I could wave that magic wand, what would I want to appear so that I could live my best life? Great. Let's go find that out. Right? Let's start asking those questions again and getting curious, because then you can go out there and say, hey, babe, I know I need to hike once a week. That centers me. That brings me joy. Your family will probably be like, absolutely.
Yes.
It's mom's hike day. Mom, go hike. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's incredible when you start to love yourself and you respect yourself and you show up in all areas of your life with that. It's incredible how much love you get back. It's almost mind blowing when you realize there are so many people out there who are dying to help me. They just didn't know how.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. Oh my goodness. This was so good. And I'm sure we could go down several more paths, but I want to bring it back a little bit and just get to know a little bit more about you and your business. And one of the things that we talk a lot about on the Consistency Corner and in terms of marketing and branding is we talk a lot about brand values. So I would love to know, in your business, what is one of those brand values and how did you land on that and how does it show up in your day to day?
I mean, I think the word that's coming to me is just authenticity. Be real. One of the things I love that I'm seeing so much more in marketing and on social media and even in commercials, on TV, I'm seeing people and energies and experiences that I'm like, I relate to you. I understand, like, you're going to get me. I don't even know what your business is. I don't even know what you're selling, but I know that if you and I were at a party, I'd be so interested in your story and your perspective and in your opinions. So for me, this kind of energy of like authenticity and honesty is such a huge thing for me. It's that way with my kids too. I tell my kids, you can basically do whatever you want in your life as long as you're telling me the truth. Like, if I know where you are and you're being honest with me, then I know that we're getting each other and we're relating to each other. So authenticity has been a huge thing for me. I also, for me too, I think because life is always changing, a huge part of my brand is also allowing yourself to change. just
Mm.
because you said you were so good at this, right? Like with the way your career and your life has evolved. And I love the way you even talk about it on my podcast with that you are choosing to have one kid. I think it's at this time, I think it's okay if we're not doing what everybody else is doing. I think there's so much beauty in really standing up for what feels good to you, what matters to you. And when we do that, we attract the people that are meant to be in our world. We're not here
Mhm.
to help everybody. We're here to help the people we're meant to help. So authenticity and having fun.
Yeah.
I'm constantly having fun with my marketing. You can see it's changing all the time. I'm changing my business. I'm changing everything, but my missions never change. I'm
Yeah.
always about just empowering women and helping everybody really not just accept who they are, but embrace who they are with like, oh my gosh, you're welcome. I'm here. I love it. And I think that's so important in branding. And that really attracts me to people that I would like to work and grow my business with, that they are as real and authentic as I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I appreciate that, like you said, that the culture is shifting, the world is shifting
It
so
is.
that authenticity is more accepted,
Yeah.
more mainstream, and more norm. But it's that abundance mindset of knowing that when you are authentic, the right people are going to show up
Yeah.
because you were meant to help them versus like that scarcity mindset of what if people don't like this? Well, then you're not for those people. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
You're not for
You
those people.
know?
Yeah. And something that's helped a lot, when you're on social media, it's really normal to get caught up in the vanity metrics. How many views did I get? How many people are in my DMs? How many followers do I have? And our brain likes to tell us that, gosh, if you're losing followers, you're doing something wrong. But
Mhm.
when you're trusting that you're showing up authentically and it's coming from like, I know what my mission is and my message is clear with my mission, then it's like you can almost change the meaning behind those things. Like, you know what? Maybe I'm not losing followers. Maybe my audience is just becoming more aligned with my messaging. And I'm
Yeah.
finally, the people that are meant to hear me are, the ones that are finally hearing me. And it takes a lot of effort for me. I have to have a conversation with myself about that every day. But that has really been very freeing. And it's allowing me to like really show up online and in my marketing more authentically. Cause I'm like, you know what? I trust it. If I'm true to myself, if I'm taking care of myself and I'm showing up the way that feels really good to me, then I know that it's going to fall into place and the person that's meant to hear me is going to hear me.
Yeah.
A lot of
And
blind faith,
not
but it works.
and not allowing yourself to get caught in that scrolling trap of
Yeah.
comparison.
Yeah.
Like it's easy to do. And
Yes.
I look at women who, do similar things to me. They teach social media marketing, they own marketing agencies, and they're people who I respect and admire and think they're brilliant. But then in the same breath, I'm like, oh, I'm never going to be as good as them. Oh,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
never going to be as smart as them. And I have to coach myself and talk
Yeah.
myself through like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe it's time to put the phone down if you're starting to feel that way. Like
Yeah.
maybe you've been spending too much time
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the app because that's not serving you. And you've got to spend some time on your own. You've got to spend some time listening to your own voice and your own intuition
Yeah.
versus the comparison.
But I really appreciate you being vulnerable and admitting that because that tells me that when I choose to work with you and I have that same challenge, I know you get it and you
Hmm.
can help me through it because you've
Yeah.
helped yourself through it. I think that's also something that's, it's like I want to work. In fact, I'll give a perfect example. I'm 47. I'm going through perimenopause. My body is changing. And I was following this great yoga app for a long time. But then I looked, I was like, I'm following a guy who looks like he's 26 years old. He hasn't had a baby. He's not worried about his metabolism. Well, he's enjoyable to look at. He's not really the coach I need right now. Like, I
Mhm.
need that coach who's going to say, girl, I get it. We're talking about cortisol. We're talking about life. Like, this is the
Yeah.
best workout for you. And the reason I know that is because I had to teach myself that. So I
Yes.
think that to me is so important when you realize, okay, they get it. I'm in somebody's world that maybe they're just a couple steps ahead of me, but we're
Mhm.
on the similar path. And I think that's
Mhm.
so important.
That's so true. Well, in that vein of like understanding where you are in your journey and who you need support from, I'd love to know in terms of personal development, books or podcasts. I always love to ask people their favorite, but I'm going to caveat that with your favorite recent, because I'd love to know what's speaking to you recently.
So I am really having fun tapping into my more spiritual woo woo side. And this is just me learning more about who I am. I love podcasts. One of my favorite things to do is walk outside and listen to a podcast, or if I'm driving to pick up my kids at sports, I love listening to a podcast. And I'll give you some of my favorites. While I have a gazillion books and I do love a good bookstore, I love going to Barnes and Noble and buying a bunch of books. I'm not in a place right now where I'm able to sit and concentrate and read a book for some reason. That's just, I feel like it'll return at some point. And, I have a good balance where I love to listen to things like Gabby Bernstein and Mel Robbins. And I love Glennon Doyle, but then I'll listen to a good murder podcast if my brain just needs a break from being on. I think something that I've really allowed myself to do as, a high achieving working mom who's building her business, it's really easy with every free moment to say, oh, I've got a free moment. Let me go do that meditation. Let me go listen to that self-help podcast. Let me go improve my mind. Sometimes improving our mind is like, I just need to go lay in the grass right now and just let my dog snuggle up next to me. And so sometimes if I just want to listen to a murder podcast because it just lets me not think, I do that too. So it's all about balance there, right?
Yes.
I eat a lot of salads, but I love French fries.
Yes, that's so true. I'm the same way. I will listen to mostly personal development, business podcasts. And then I found myself when I needed to decompress, I would listen to the news. And then I was like, okay, this is not really helping. Like, we need to find something else. So I was like, okay, you got to challenge yourself once a month, like read a fiction book.
Yeah. Yes. That's your
Something
voice that you talk about all the time. And I love your podcast. I mean, your voice, I will say, I just enjoy listening to you. I feel like when you're speaking, it's as if we're kind of riding shotgun, just like driving in the car. And it feels very relatable. And it doesn't, sometimes business podcasts can overwhelm me and make me feel bad about that scroll hole. Like, oh gosh, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. There's, I think it's also so important to find the podcast where you're like, oh, I needed to hear that. It's got my juices flowing. I can't wait to see how that implements in my life, but it doesn't make you feel that panic and ego. And your podcast really always makes me feel like, okay, I'm good. I'm inspired.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So because we talk so much about consistency here on the podcast, and I love to always remind everybody, consistent doesn't have to mean constant.
Ooh, I love that.
I would love to know something that you are very consistent with in your business that you're proud of.
Oh my gosh. I will say I've been very consistent with my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very proud of it. I have a very open throat chakra. So speaking on a podcast does not drain me. It lights me up.
Mm-hmm.
And I get more joy out of that than I do creating a carousel post, but I am consistently showing up. I try to post 3 times a week and I'm proud of myself for that. But I would say that every single day I am working towards something in my business, right? No matter what's going on in my life, right? Even if I'm on the road, even if I can't, do all the things, talk about what is the one thing I can do today that's going to keep me above the line, that's going to keep progress going. And I believe progress can look like 0.0001%.
Yeah.
But it's just always like showing up not only for my business, because I think our businesses have energies and identities just like we do. And I think she likes to know, like, Scottie's always there for me. She's got my back in whatever way she's available. She's got my back. And I never in my mind have, even when I have a hard day or a hard month or a hard season in business, it's not, I've really worked hard to train my brain into, I'm not a failure. What do I need to learn from this? It's like a puzzle piece. I'm always just like, what's the puzzle piece that I don't have yet that I need to go research and find? So it's always keeping a good energy of hope and injection of positivity. I'm not toxic positive, but it's just not really, I'm always staying on this. Of course it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Right.
Yeah. Well, and the idea of the puzzle piece, I was actually thinking about that this morning, that we wish things were linear. Yeah. Because that makes sense in our brain.
Yeah.
But it's not. Most of the time, it's not. It's not only like a puzzle, but it's even a 3D puzzle. We're like, we got to put different pieces in at different times, or this piece can't go in. And like, that's how
maybe this piece is coming out.
Yeah. Like that's how building a business is. And I think it's not only is it building a business, but like growing your family, building your family, raising your kids. It's a 3D puzzle.
It's a 3D puzzle. I love that. And I will say it does help to be around people that get it. I think when you can really lean on people, it's okay to, if you're having a crap day in life and business, you don't have to just suck it up and suffer through that. And I have found that, I found certain podcasts or certain activities or certain things that, hey, when I'm having a hard day, I keep talking about being outside nature. I know that when things aren't going the way I think they quote should, I close my laptop, I put the phone down, and I just go outside. Sometimes for 60 seconds, sometimes for 60 minutes. And I just let myself right, Scottie, we've got this. It's like, it's okay. Today is one day. Look at all the great things you've done, and it just kind of helps me reconnect. But it's taken time for me to learn this is what I need to get grounded and centered and to consider myself in my day. But I think that's also so fun. Learn how you can help yourself and also know that you don't have to do it alone. Like you can reach out to Ruthie and go follow people on social media that help you feel really encouraged. I always encourage, if there's a person that you see on social media and it pings even like a little bit in the, mute them and follow them. It's okay. That's a beautiful boundary, right? And that way your feed, all of a sudden, I open my feed up. I'm like, I saw dogs, golden retrievers, affirmations, like badass women. I'm like, I feel amazing.
Yes.
And, and I think that's been really helpful that we have so much, we get to design that, right? Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I love that. Well, Scottie, this was such a fun conversation. Let everyone know, where do you hang out online, where people can connect with you and learn more if they're interested in more of these good vibes.
You're amazing. Thank you for having me. I'm on Instagram a lot. I do love the gram. I do love the good stories. I do spend a lot of time there, even if I'm not always posting a reel. But that's at Scottie Durrett. I also have a website, which is scottiedurrett.com, and the Momplex podcast. But my DMs are always open. I really just want women and moms to know that their passions and their desires in their life and their business, they're there for a reason and they're meant for you. And if you can dream it, you can make it happen and you can do it in a way that feels good. I think that's like the best thing.
And on Instagram, you currently have a great example of a 3-grid. So I got to give you a shout out for doing the pinned posts and the 3-grid, because you're right. If you're not always posting, if you're not always doing reels, you've got what your audience needs to know pinned right there to the top.
Who came up with the 3-grid? Because that thing is brilliant. And you have the 9-grid, right?
So I have actually pivoted away from the 9-grid because I am working through my messaging right now. And a shift in messaging. And as we shift, creating content can absolutely help us evolve and get to that next point. So I did a 3-grid.
Shifts are fun. I love I love that. Okay.
So yeah, and I always say that the 9-grid is not right for everybody all the time, but a 3-grid, everybody needs a 3-grid.
I will say it took me, oh my gosh, how many times I posted them in the wrong order and then they would go back. So everybody, it's okay if you post and delete and post. It's okay. It's okay.
Yes, for sure. Oh my goodness. I love it. Well, thank you again so much for being here. This was an awesome conversation. We'll put everything linked in the show notes so you guys can connect with Scottie and learn more.
Thank you.